Welcome to the 6 Degree Sports and USA Youth and High Schools Rugby Podcast. I'm your host, Mick Lear. Each cast, we dive deep with one of the world's best coaches, arguably the number one skills coach on the planet. He has 2 World Cup winning gold medals with the 2011 and 2015 All Blacks. He's contributed as a consultant to an Olympic bronze medal with the Canadian Women's Sevens in Rio, and is the current head coach of the Fiji Drua in Super Rugby. If you've been following the recent success of the Flying Fijians in beating England and Australia prior to and during the current Rugby World Cup, then contextually you can see his influence, Mick Byrne. Together with Wallaby legend, himself a Super Rugby, European Cup and World Cup winner, Rod Kafer, Tech Whiz, Scott Saunders and myself, we form the pillars of 6 Degree Sports. Wondering what we're about? 6 Degree combines world-class coaching insights with cutting-edge technology, putting elite training regimes and practices right into your hands, whether you're a coach, player, referee or avid rugby enthusiast, through this, your everyday smartphone. Since the first rollout of our software during the height of COVID in 2020, over 9,000 players and 2,500 coaches have benefited from our platform. Our impact speaks for itself. Our collaborations range from the New South Wales Positive Rugby Foundation to this exciting partnership with USA Youth and High Schools, and more recently, through that, Southern California Youth Rugby and Rugby Washington, who have purchased the full suite of functionality for all of their registered coaches. For those keen to elevate their coaching prowess, our platform isn't just about following a regime. Although, if you're new to rugby, that's exactly what you can do. It's about innovation. You can customise trainings, integrate new strategies, and communicate directly with your team and or every member of your club, all through our platform. But let's pivot to why you're here, the podcast. Another rugby podcast, you may say, and that's a fair point. But while many explore the what and the why of rugby, we delve into the how, breaking myths and legends with actionable insights from the best in the game, demonstrated across a variety of mediums to ensure learning and transfer. Our goal? Not necessarily to churn out professionals, although, if that occurs, fantastic. But to make every participant, be it coach, player or referee, the best version of themselves. Enough of the preamble, let's dive into the show. Okay, Mick, so subject for our first podcast, which is the skills of the triple threat, and more importantly, how effecting a good running pass enables the triple threat. There's obviously a lot of things out there on social media that relate to passing and techniques, etc. Now, you've got over 30 years of experience in this with some of the best players in the world, and I guess what we'd like to interrogate is your thoughts on it and how to affect it. And then obviously we're going to show some examples of it being done at the elite level, of it being done at the sub-elite level, and also utilising a young player that we're working with at the moment at 6 Degree to try and help him develop the ability to be able to essentially have all options available to him, which is obviously the skill of the triple threat, and be able to get to that option within one step. So firstly, how did you come up with it and when did you come up with it?
Look, the triple threat for me, when I started coaching back in the early 90s, I wanted to investigate what coaching was about. I wasn't a great coach when I started, and we won't go into all the details, but I invested in myself as a coach. And I was fortunate enough to be coached by probably one of the great coaches in Alan Jeans. And there's a lot of Alan Jeans' philosophies that I've adopted into our skills. One of those is, for example, Alan used to talk about the skill sets of elite players. The example he used for those in cricketing countries, because you could go down to the local park and you could watch the local game of cricket, and you could see the opening batsman step inside a short ball and roll his wrist over the bat and get the ball to the ground, and it'd run to the boundary for 4, and you'd say, well, that was a perfectly executed hook shot. But the ball was travelling at 105 kilometres an hour. And so it was a good shot by that player and a good ball by that bowler, but that was the level of cricket they were at. At the elite level, you'd watch Mark Waugh do the same thing, but the ball is being bowled at 155 kilometres an hour. So the skill sets weren't necessarily the ability to do something. It was the ability to do something under pressure or fatigue. And so to do that, you have to learn how the body works and how the body can generate the skill movement in the least amount of time while still maintaining accuracy. So for me, that was the big driver when I started coaching. I remember Jeansy saying those things. I was like, right, so how do I make the elite players able to do movements in very short windows? So how can they make the same skill movement that we all can probably make? But how do I do it consistently well under pressure and fatigue? And that is, I've got to do it quicker than everyone else. So that was the first thing. So one of the other things was I bought a book called Finding the Winning Edge by Bill Walsh, one of the great NFL coaches. And during that book, there was a chapter on the triple threat in there. And it just intrigued me as to a quarterback triple threat being, you know, the ability to run, obviously, the ability to hand off to a running back, and the ability to throw to a wide receiver. And the great players, the great triple threat players, were able to do everything without giving away the cues, but they were also able to do things late or earlier than everyone else. So that allowed them to deliver the skill at the right time. So because they were able to deliver the skill at pace, that meant they could deliver the ball whenever they wanted to, whenever it was available. And some of the great quarterbacks can deliver it right at the last, just as they're getting hit. So I remember looking at that, thinking the triple threat works perfectly in union for our playmakers. Now, the triple threat in union would be your running, your passing, or your kicking. And so for me, it was like, how can we make sure that our playmakers, if you want to call them that, our ball players, can develop the triple threat skill set, and also living the philosophies of the ability to do it quickly and under pressure and fatigue. And so that was my mission. My mission was to work through that. The first thing I had to do was understand how the body worked. I knew how my body worked, and I knew how some players around me were able to do things, and I looked at and I learnt and I watched. But the biggest thing for me was investing time in learning. So I did some short courses in biomechanics around musculoskeletal work, and I also did a lot of work on sports that required explosive power. And I think probably the biggest one for me was martial arts. So when I combined all that together in the late 90s, the mid to late 90s, when I came into rugby at early 2001, I developed a process around the passing. So we developed what I call the punch pass, which was the ability to utilise the skill sets we just talked about, the ability to throw the pass across the body while committing defenders and not giving away the cues, which was what Jeansy had talked about, the ability to be skillful late in the, you know, and be able to do a skill quickly, which gives you the option then to commit defenders because you're not giving away any cues. You're able to do stuff right at the last second. So once we did that, once I learned that action, we started developing the punch pass, you know, and the idea there was to be able to get the ball, release the ball from in front of your body so that you can be a triple threat. So when the defender's looking at you, they're not sure, is this guy running? Is he passing? Or is he kicking? And I thought if we could develop that in play, I wasn't sure how we would go with it, obviously, but it was, for me, that was my goal. That was my outcome, if you like, of the skills to be able to get players to do that. And when we think, as you say, with social media, there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet, which is awesome. And like anything out there, there's some stuff that I sort of think, oh, that's good. And there's other stuff I look at going, oh, that's not quite so good, but that's okay. That's just my opinion. But, you know, the opportunity coming for us and through, you know, you're presenting to me now through the USA Youth and High Schools platform that we're lucky enough to be partnering with was something that excited me to say, well, I think I can deliver some stuff now out there and stuff I've been working on for 25 years and share some of the principles of what it is that I've done and what it is that I've been teaching skills now for 25 years. And, we'll have some insights into some of the work I've done in some pretty good programs, including the All Blacks and Wallabies and things that we're able to do and work with our players, to help them improve their skill. But what we want to do at 6 Degrees, we want to teach the skill. We want to teach players, going back to Alan Jeans, how they can develop their skill and be able to deliver it at faster levels than where they've come from. For us, we want to give every player the opportunity to get there. Long-winded answer to a very simple question, but I just thought it's important that some of that information, it's not just made up of 8-9 years of research and work with me here going through how the musculoskeletal system works to generate power, human behaviour through some psychology on how we can commit people and how people read cues, and then finally our ability to relate it to the game of rugby so that we're not stuck in the mud as far as being biomechanically 100% correct, but functionally biomechanically right for the game.
Yeah, no, that's a very good answer, mate. And so I think probably next step is let's go through some of the information that's out there in social media and then sort of compare that to the concepts that you've come up with and the reasoning behind that. So if we look at catch pass, we'll start, obviously there's a pre-catch movement motion, there's a catch motion, there's a pass finish motion. So some of the stuff that's out there is you should catch, run, then pass. And specifically, you hear a lot of coaches saying, hold feet, don't move forward until you catch the ball. Some other coaches will say, move forward to catch the ball when the outside foot hits the ground, so you can pass when the inside foot hits the ground. And obviously, we know it's easier to pass off your inside foot. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that, I don't want to be disrespectful, but, I call sort of the myths of the game a little bit. There's a lot of stuff out there around, the catch. When we look at this or preface our conversation, it seems like there's a lot of detail. People that say, just let the players sort it out for themselves, let the players work it out for themselves. They need to play games. There needs to be games-based work for them to get better and those types of things. That's all sense, but it's a bit of a myth. For me, if you give them little activities of learning their body, they will learn to move their body in that way. It's no different to any coaching, the 3-point throw, coaching in basketball, go to a swimming lesson, go to a golf lesson, go to any sporting lesson you learn, or even learn how to type. There'll be activities you do which you teach yourself how to do. And all we're doing is we're utilising that concept. And, we've talked about it and we'll talk about it again in the cognitive associative autonomous learning styles. And we spend a lot of time in helping players understand their movement. And while we're here, people can look and go, oh, that's a lot to think about. Well, no, if we do the activities right and we help them understand the movement, it becomes a habit and they're not thinking about it. But initially, there is a bit of thinking that goes into this coach. And this is how we can start our training sessions. Just start our training sessions with a bit of thinking, a bit of cognitive work about where do my feet need to be, where do my hands need to be, what action am I doing, and do that. And then moving into some drills-based training where then you can get into your opposed or team training, which is autonomous stuff. So there's the process to go through. So we're not talking about the big picture training here. We're just talking about how do we change players' habits, and therefore we need to speak thoroughly about little movements. So the movement you're talking about here, the pre-catch, we want our players running first. So we need to run and catch pass. That's our action. Because by running, we're giving the defender something to worry about. If I'm just standing there waiting for the ball, the defenders can just tee off. And defence has improved so much since I started in the game. Line speed now, different styles of defence. I don't know what Ireland are currently doing, but I know Andy Farrell used to defend space, and he's had a lot of success against good teams. So it's not necessarily picking up a man as such. It's about being connected in space being equal distance from your teammate are just flying up and defending space. And if the opposition are good enough to get there, they're good enough. But the line speed that defences bring now mean you have to do certain things well. And one of the key ones is to set up if you can run first, the defence is straight away there. Well, he's running, have a bit of a look. So they still bring line speed, but there's a secondary thought in their head. Then you need to catch the ball while you're running. And the myth for me is what foot's on the ground, because the big key for us here and the skill sets we're teaching and that I've been teaching now for 25 years is your running pass is a pass that you do over either foot while maintaining pace. So we certainly don't advocate passing off a certain foot. You pass off either foot. We're not advocating you pass off the inside foot, which is if I'm passing right to left, I'm not passing over my left foot. And I don't advocate passing over your outside foot, which is if I'm passing right to left is my right foot. We advocate here that you pass over either foot when you need to make the pass. That is the biggest skills challenge, I believe. And I was asked this in 2005 in New Zealand. What do you think is the greatest growth of the game? And I said, the running pass. And people looked at me weirdly and said, what do you mean? I said, well, no one does it properly. No one actually does the running pass with hips to try line. So you're actually threatening the defensive line, maintaining pace and pass across your body. It sounds simple. But the habits that players have are always trying to get their feet involved in the pass. So the key message for me is I don't care what foot's on the ground when you catch the ball. You run the line you want. You be strong on the line you're running when you run. You catch the ball on the inside of your body. So, the perfect place to catch that ball is with your right hand, basically, elbow close to your body. If the ball's coming from your right side, your right hand is up just on the inside of your body there, and your left hand goes across and joins it, and they're equal. So your hands are in this sort of shape, and your hands are in straight line of your arms. So wherever your arms are pointing, your hands are. So we want to avoid that action. That's another myth. Look through the TV, hands up so you can see the ball. They're just little myths. What we look for here is hands need to be continuation of the arms. So when you do that, and they need to be together, because that's the greatest safety net there is in the game. Those two things together will catch the ball. There's talks, I hear people talk about, I'll put your hand so that it's in the position it is ready for passing. Well, let's get first things first. Let's catch the ball first, and then we can subtly change to a passing action rather than catching a passing action. Catching your catching action, then you're ready to go. If we're passing just catching and passing little ball, we don't make any adjustment anyway. Here we talk about no adjustment. So if I'm just catching the ball and giving it to a tip runner, I don't make any adjustment with my hands. My hands are catch the ball, and then I just release hands to target across my body, either there or out the back if I am. The pass we're talking about is a running pass. So we have an ability to catch, and within simple one step, we can get our hands into a position to make a good long pass, long spiral pass or long miss pass, whatever it is. If we're just making a catch pass, the hands stay there. So the first one is run forward, balanced, on the line you want to run. So that could be, you might want to run straight down the field because you might be a forward who's engaging defenders in front of you. You might be a 10 who's running down on a little bit of an angle. You might run forward first on what we call Y line. So you might run forward first, and then just as the pass comes, you might drift onto the pass a little bit so that you run a little Y line. Or you might just run straight, what we call a V line, which is straight to the outside of 45 degrees, so that the pass gets to you outside the defender that's in front of you. So whatever running line you want, you can choose. So we talk about your feet are there for running, for stepping, and putting you on the field where you need. Your feet have nothing to do with the pass. All right, so we'll talk about that later. So for me, the big myths of which foot's on the ground when you catch, which foot's in the air, it's just noise. And, I don't know how long the saying's been around, but I remember hearing it a while back. That's just a lot of white noise in the background you don't need. Have your hands up early. Catch before the ball gets to your body. Hands are an extension of your arms. If you can, thumbs reasonably close together, your fingers forward, perfect catching position. So for me, that's what we've always worked on.
Yeah, cool. Just, do you want to elaborate on the difference between fingers up, which a lot of people say, and that the hand's extension of your arms?
Yeah, well, I remember when we first started coaching it, I'd ask people, what are soft hands? And people would say, oh, your fingers are relaxed. Okay. You back away a little bit when the ball comes towards you. These are all just little things out there. Soft hands is actually good, strong grip. Your fingers are nice and hard. When I say hard, they're ready to catch. They're not tense. They're armed, ready to catch. But because you keep your arm as an extension, your hand as an extension of your arm, when the ball hits your hand, there's a little give in the wrist, just a subtle little give. All right? That subtle little give is what creates the soft hands. So as the ball comes in hard into your hands, because your hands are an extension of your arms, as the ball comes in, there's just you can see there's just a little give as the ball comes in. There's just a little give, which is just a natural movement of the wrist coming back. But because you're ready for it, that's how you get soft hands. You create hard hands by snatching at the ball. So a lot of the snatching comes from hands up. So your hands are up, and as the ball comes, you come down to catch it. That creates a snapping action. Or you just keep the hand up here and you wait for the ball to hit your hand, and there's already no give in your wrist. So when it hits your wrist, it's rock hard, and that's like that becomes a snappy catch. So soft hands is created by keeping your hands in line with your arm, and wherever you want to point that, it's not up like this, it's towards the target. So as I'm reaching here, my hands might be like that, just subtly fingers up a touch. My elbows are there and I'm ready to go. So yeah, that's the concept of how we can ensure we get good catch.
Yeah, cool. And just the point, you do hear a lot of people say if the ball's coming from my left, which is towards my head, and they say, I'll get your inside hand up and your outside hand will naturally come.
That's another myth. Again, I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't know who these people say it. I don't know who they are. So I'm not being disrespectful to anybody. It's another myth, because the inside hand is the most important hand. Sorry, the outside hand, as we're talking. So if I'm catching the ball, let's be clear on the definitions.
Yeah.
If I'm catching the ball from my right side, my inside hand is my right hand, and my outside hand is the hand furthest away, is my left. Now, if I'm saying that I stick my right hand up, my left hand will naturally come across, that's a myth. If I'm right-handed, my left hand doesn't want to go over there, because that hand, the outside hand, is the hand that does most of the bracing of the catch. So that outside hand, when the ball comes, it's the hand that does most of the bracing. It's a two-hand catch, but most of the bracing is done by the backhand. If I'm left-handed, and I've worked with some great players in the world, and this has been with them. So if one of the greatest handling catching players in the world struggled with this, there's a fair chance that us mere mortals will have the same problem.
Yeah.
And that was that from the ball coming from right to left, they were more comfortable catching the ball in front of their body because their left hand was tucked in here and their right hand could get behind the ball.
Yeah.
Because it was in here, they could actually get their right hand to do a lot of the catching. So working hard to get them to put their left hand across to the right hand was really, really important. And it took us probably 9 sessions for that player, one of the best catching players in the world, world-class player, to be comfortable sticking his left hand over and catching the ball early.
Yeah.
No problem when you took him to the other side and he said, let's go and catch early, his right hand was over there every single time. And one of the ways we designed, and when we look at this, is we film from behind. And we just have, 3 players down one side of the field, just a little gauntlet of maybe, 10, 12 metres apart. And we have one ready to pass right hand. You catch right hand and you pass to a guy over the left. You catch right hand, pass to the guy on the left. Or you can alternate. So you catch from the right, pass to the left, catch from the left, pass to the right. When you film from behind, you always see the guy catching from the left, the right-handers. You always see their hand out here. So if you can picture you're filming from behind, you can always see the ball being caught. Then when they throw it from the right-hand side, so now he's catching it from his right, you never see the ball from behind because it's always caught in front of the body. Just subtle little habits.
Yeah.
And these are world-class players. So if world-class players are struggling to go and catch the ball early with their left hand being the outside hand, it's a skill set we've got to work on. Yeah. So having a saying that says if you put your inside hand up, your outside hand will come naturally is a myth, because I've coached world-class players who haven't been able to naturally do it. Naturally, their left hand will come to the middle of their body.
Yeah.
So, that's something that I've identified over, 30 years of coaching it.
Yeah, awesome, mate. And there too, probably clarify, because, again, a lot of people say reach for the pass.
Yep.
And when you reach for the pass, you can, if it's coming now from here, you can sort of get into that space again, can't you, where you're getting those hard hands, but also throws your running motion out. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, well, I think, again, we talked right at the start here that there's a lot of information we're going to talk about right now. We haven't even got to the pass. We're just talking about catching.
Mm.
But when we do our activities, players will do that. They'll learn these things instinctively, so they're not thinking about it. But to coach it, we need to understand some of the things. So the first one is if you reach for it, you have to twist your upper body right around, And if you twist your upper body around, you're putting pressure on your hips to be able to maintain squareness, It's certainly you're not able to get to an outside position if you've turned your body in.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk about reaching for the ball here. We're not actually interested in reaching for the ball. Our inside hand, if you like, you can just have it, your elbow close to your body, and the hand is only just on the inside of the body. It's just, and so when you reach, your left hand, with the outside hand shouldn't really be anything more than 90 degrees. Maybe a little bit more than 90 degrees by the time it gets there. If your arms are past 90 degrees when you're trying to catch the ball, you're in all sorts of trouble. Now, we don't talk about the 90 degrees to our players. We just look at that, and if we see them gone past the 90, then we just explain to them, maybe just tighten up your hands a little bit, bring your hands a little bit closer to your body. How does that feel? Yep, right. Yeah, then they say, but I'm not catching it early. Yeah, you are. You're catching it before it reaches your body. That's all catching early is.
Yeah.
You're catching it before it reaches your body. You're not catching it 2 feet away from your body. You don't have to catch it 1 foot away from your body. You just have to catch it before it gets to your body. That's catching early. All right. And then we're in a position to play. That's what we work on. So hands together, catching early. You might have it's just a reach with that left hand, outside hand to get there. It's hardly anything. If I'm sitting here now and I put my right hand up and I'm looking here and I'm ready to go over there, my left hand, my shoulder it's just a shoulder turn to reach my left hand. I'm not actually rotating across my hips. It's just a little shoulder turn to get there. So, again, we talk about them, everyone's entitled to their opinions, and people will have their opinions about what we're doing, which is fine on social media. All I know is from our time together and from my time working through the All Blacks program and Scotland before that, some of these skill sets helped improve very good players.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing, and even to the point where I've seen some social media with some of the guys I've worked with at the All Blacks out there sprouting some of the things we taught them, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And I think I remember when I first started coaching, I was told by a coaching lecturer, the greatest compliment you can receive at the end of your career is your players use your words as though they're their own. He said, if you finish your coaching career and your players are using your words as though they belong to them, you feel satisfied. So I'm guessing when I see these guys out in the social media, delivering skill sets and things like that, I look and go, right, well, maybe I've had a bit of success there. So the old man sitting here probably going, yeah, maybe the message did get through.
Yeah. No, definitely. Well, it's definitely got through. We know that. The other thing too is the triple threat position is where you hold the ball. And a lot of people say catch the ball, and if I'm passing that way, or if I receive the ball from here, that I cock it on my inside hip, so I'm passing that way.
Yep. Look, I think the biggest challenge, and we'll talk about it shortly, around the passing action and how we coach it and what we need to look at. To be a good triple threat, the ball has to be sitting in front of your body. Because if it's sitting there, what am I doing? Am I passing? Am I running? I probably look like I'm running, to be fair.
Mm.
Or am I kicking? I don't look like I'm kicking. That's the biggest challenge of the triple threat, is how do I get the ball? How do I carry the ball so that I can be running, passing, or kicking? We know that we can get within 2 steps. We can get the triple threat to be delivered by a player within 2 steps. He's world class.
Yeah.
Okay. The challenge for a lot of players is that if you're watching them, you can see what they're doing 3 or 4 steps away. So they're passing. They go into a passing action 3 or 4 steps back. The worst case scenario is they're carrying because they tuck.
Yeah.
Once they tuck, they're carrying. But even if they're carrying and they've got the ball in front of them, then if they can actually deliver a pass, that's great. That's a double threat, which is we teach our forwards, a lot of our forwards get the double threat. But our playmakers, our ball players are triple threat players. So we need to be able to get some sort of grip on the ball that allows us to carry comfortably, and the ball needs to be carried from the middle of the body. A good place to carry the ball is in front of the belly button. I think the belly button is always a good place. We use the belly button in 6 degree and a lot of things. We use the belly button as a tackling target. We use the belly button for lots of other things because it's a good part of the body. It's the middle.
Yeah.
There, you balance the ball carrying there. It's not too low, so you're not leaning down. You're not getting in the way of your legs. It's not too high, so you're limiting your ability to explode and extend. It just sits in a perfect place. And we'll talk about that when we get into the passing action, why that carry there is a good spot. And then once from there, then you've got a decision to make. Our good players we work on a whole range of things, vision, voices coming from the outside. Decision-making is a whole new session in itself. But if we just look at the fact that we've got good decision-making, we've got good voice, we've got good communication, and decisions been made, and we've got to execute the skill. All we're talking about here is the execution of the skill. All right? So as we've done in previous sessions, we've talked about the scared mentality, setting early, reading the cues, good action words, reacting well, executing to domination. So when we talk about scared, that's what we're talking about here is our reaction into execution. So once we've set ourselves early, we've read the cues, got good action words come in, we're now ready to react and execute. That's what we're talking about here, the skills. We're talking about skill sets. So carrying the ball in that good skill set position is really important. It needs to be in the middle of the body. That's why we work on our passing action, being really strong with our arms and how we use them, which we'll talk about shortly. Loading up a pass doesn't give you the opportunity to be in a good kicking position. Doesn't give you an option to go without queuing up what you're doing from the hip. Middle of the body carry is belly button carries is a good place to be.
Awesome. Now, the next one, storing energy in the bicep and the pec to generate passing action, and specifically in doing that, punching the chest to generate the passing action.
Yeah, it's a bit of a myth. Again, not being disrespectful to anybody. This is me, all right? This is just my thought. For us, the power comes from the tricep. Okay, so the biggest power base for us is the punching action, and we'll go through it later. The punching action, so the tricep is our most powerful muscle when it comes to passing. Everything else that's being spoken about there, bicep and pec and all that, they're a result. They actually finish, not start. So our passing action starts with the tricep. The worst muscle that probably creates the worst passing action is the bicep. So what I mean by that is the bicep doing that Pass, the bicep doing that is the worst passing action. So if you're engaging your bicep, you're also asking for some trouble on the pass because the bicep does that movement, bends your arm. So if you're passing and you're engaging your bicep, your bicep's wanting to do that. That's what your bicep does. Your bicep bends your elbow. We say we engage the tricep. So once the tricep's engaged, it punches out. So the tricep generates the power. The chest and everything is just a matter of following the punch across your body. Once you've done that punch with your tricep, explode your elbow and explode your wrist, which we'll go through, then your chest can follow. But the biggest challenge about loading up your bicep at the start of a pass is the bicep wants to bend. And that's exactly the action we want to get rid of. That's the old push-pull. Push-pull. So push your left hand down. If I'm passing right to left, you push your left hand down and you pull your right hand up. Bang, bang. And that's the action we've got to get rid of because that's the most inaccurate passing action you can have. One hand's going away from the target, the other hand's going away from the target. Yeah. The best thing to do is punch both triceps. So we punch both triceps to target, which takes our elbows to target, and then we work, which we'll talk about shortly, we really work hard on that wrist rotation to finish with power.
Beautiful. And then we're into the finish and follow through now. So the punching the chest or using your lower leg to generate power for the pass, which you've already spoken about, cues opposition, takes away options, etc. So if we're now looking at the pass finish, one, how do you then get power? And I know you've started to touch on that, but there's also power you can get at the finish of the pass, isn't there, through utilising...
Oh, massive. And that was something you're right, mate. When you talk about that, it's something that is probably primary for me. And it came about in the early days of looking at martial arts. I remember looking at generating power, and one of the things that came up, I'd watched a couple of Bruce Lee movies, when I was a kid, where they were English, but their lips weren't. We used to laugh. The lips weren't English, but we used to think, oh, it's poor acting because we were kids. And then I went back and I started looking at his concept of the 1-inch punch, and it just fits perfectly with our pass. Mm. So then I started investigating martial arts, and I went to a couple of good martial arts coaches and teachers probably, not coaches, teachers. And I said to them about their punching, and he said, my most powerful punches turn late. Yeah. I was like, oh, what do you mean? He said, my most powerful punches in this dojo turn their wrist late. So they explode their tricep, smash their elbow forward, and their arm straightens up. And then right just before contact, bang, they snap their wrist, bang. And he said, they're my most powerful punches. He said, the worst punches turn early. So the weaker punches turn early. I've heard different things out there around pass, get the rotation of the ball, That's another myth, all right? You don't want the ball rotating, especially at the start of the pass. The rotation can come right at the end. You can actually pass right across your body. The ball can be just still in your hands on the other side of your body, and then all of a sudden the rotation comes by a powerful explosion of your wrists. So your wrists are here at the end, and then bang, they explode in, bang, they explode in. That explosion of your wrists generates a massive amount of power, to the effect where greatest martial arts teachers say their most powerful guys turn late. Yeah. If you're turning early, so if you're coaching people to rotate early on the pass, you're releasing all their power. So again, I've heard that you need to rotate. Rotation happens right at the end of the pass. Our best and most powerful passes, their rotation starts at the end. So we talk about loading up. In the early days of research, coming across the concept of force and torque, Torque. Torque. Force is utilizing muscle movement, and torque is utilizing your joint. Combining your force movements with your torque movements is what generates explosive power. So what we need to do is understand, how do we get the ball across our body? So if we're loading up in the middle of our body, our ball only has to go to just that hip, doesn't have to go any wider, just the tiniest of movements. So if we look at counter movement, there's a term in there in biomechanics called coupling. And the coupling is the relationship between eccentric movement and concentric movement. The eccentric pull back, the concentric explosion. The shorter that and faster that movement is, the more power you can generate. So the slower and longer, the more strength you can bring to something. So if I load up a punch and I get back here really slow and then I slam it in, I can generate some pretty good strength. But if I want to generate explosive power, that movement has got to be back and quick, bang, 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 that counter movement, that coupling movement. If I can just generate a smaller movement to explosive movement, that's where I can generate power. So if I've got the ball on the belly button, I can actually I don't have to pull it back that far. Just have to load up a little bit of a punch back here. Don't have to go very far. Just load it up. All I'm doing now is I'm loading up the tricep ready to explode. I load it up ready to explode. My tricep goes across my body and I make the pass. And we'll talk about how we make that work. The other thing about force and torque is understanding the angle of a joint, the most powerful angle of the joint. Now, we don't talk to our players about this, but we're giving a little podcast here to say to people, here's where all this stuff comes from. The most powerful angle of a joint is 96 degrees. So if I've got an angle of a leg, a kick, if I want to kick, if I'm in martial arts and I'm kicking, or I've got football and I'm kicking, or I'm passing or I'm punching, the most powerful part of the movement is when the elbow's at 96 degrees. So that I know that I'm powerful there. So if I can load up and just push back past the 96 degree mark just a little bit and then explode through that 96 degree mark, that's when I'm bringing all my power through that joint. That's another little thing we can talk about looking at some footage shortly. So they are the keys. How do I generate power? I have that little short explosive movement and I can pass on the same plane that I'm carrying the ball, just on the belly button. That's the perfect plane. And that's ironically, I don't know if it's ironically because the body's built to do certain things, our angle of our elbow is at 96 degrees when we hold the ball at just below our belly button. So it's probably telling us the middle part there, that's when we're at our most powerful. So that's where we carry it. And then we want to make the pass across that plane, across our body, keeping that 96 degree action on our elbow. We want to go across our body and explode the tricep out. And just as the tricep is exploding out, we rotate our wrists in for the extra power release. And that is a really powerful pass. And that's what we want to do. And we want to do that both sides of our body. At no stage are we talking about rotating hips, stepping off this foot, using this foot, generating that. Because if I read the biomechanical book, if I went back to musculoskeletal examples, they will tell me you can generate the most power through your feet. By planting your feet, counter movement through your feet, up through your hips, rotate everything up, massive power. Well, I'm not in a passing competition. I'm in a commit defender competition. And I have to learn how to commit defenders and make a functionally biomechanic pass. So I have to use the concepts of biomechanics, but I'm not a slave to the biomechanics. I'm not a slave to they say you must generate it through your feet. No, that's if I'm javelin throwing, or that's if I'm shot putting, or that's if I'm boxing. But I'm playing rugby with 15 opponents that are looking at my every movement. And if I'm going to go into that generation of slamming that right foot on the ground to generate power, or to shift my right foot across my body to generate power and turn my hips, I'm giving away all the cues to the opposition. And defences these days, they are too good. They pounce on those. So we generate power through the tricep, explode the elbow through, keep the plane at 96 degrees. Again, we don't talk about these angles with our players. Part of the podcast here, we just want to give them an understanding about the research and where we've come from. But we look at it and we just look and say, no, that we say to ourselves with the coaching, no, he's you can see there he's straightened his elbow. He's lost his ability now to use his tricep. He's now gone back to a bicep pass. And the bicep pass, we know the finish of the bicep pass is probably going to be a pull action back across his body, which is probably going to result in, depending on when his leading hand came off the ball, either a ball that goes in front of the player or a ball that goes behind the player. Whereas our punch pass, where we've got our tricep extension, elbows across the body, finishing wrists together, that's going to be hands to target. That's where we finish up where the ball goes.
Beautiful. Awesome, mate. Well, I reckon based on that, why don't we have a look at a bit of footage where we see examples of this, both happening and not happening. And as I mentioned before, we've got both elite and sub-elite examples just to show people what it looks like. And at the end of it, using the 6 Degree platform, sending some coaching tips and messages to a young bloke that we're coaching at the moment. So Mick, I'll hand over to you to start with the footage.
Yep. Well, I think the key on the footage is that we understand that players aren't going to be 100% off our cheat sheet. So at some stage, you're not going to be 100% right. But there's a big difference between if we've got 8 things we're trying to work on our pass and getting 2 right versus getting 6 right. If we're getting 6 of our things we're trying to do right, we're probably going to result in a reasonable pass. What we want to do is we want to help players that are currently only getting 1 or none and relying on some other passing action. We want to help them change. So anybody that we're showing in video clips, we're not picking on them. I know it's really hard coming from a coach. It's really hard for someone to look at footage and go, oh, he's making a fool of me or he's embarrassing me. I've had this discussion with other players. We could show every player doing this. So by showing a player, we're not picking on that player. We're actually picking on the movement. And it's easy for me to say, the player sees it and goes, oh, they make a bad example of me. No. It's about the action. And straight up front, we're not talking about the player. And we won't talk about players' names. We just talk about the action. All right? We may talk about a player in the opposition defence, etc., like that, but most times we'll try and avoid using the player's name. But the idea here is not to pick on players, as a preface to clip.
Okay, that concludes part 1 of the podcast. Part 2, which will be published in the next 24 to 48 hours, will show, as discussed at the end of the cast, clear video footage of all the concepts in play during games and during practice at elite and sub-elite level. But on to some housekeeping. We showed in the platform the functionality of the 6 Degree coaching app. As members of USA Youth and High School, every coach receives a free version of the platform web application, sponsored by Major League Rugby. To get access to the platform, go to the new USA Youth and High School's website, click membership and then click on coaching platform. Underneath that you'll see a video which will show you how to register. Register and take advantage of the fundamentally wonderful resource that's there. Some of the features that we showed during the podcast are advanced or upgrade features. Once you get your head around utilising the app, and if you want those upgrade features, then all you need to do is click either customise or upgrade in the app. The app will take you through that process. Now, 2 states have purchased the upgrade features for every one of their coaches. The Southern California Youth Rugby and Rugby Washington. For those coaches who would like to take advantage of that, please email me and we can arrange a demonstration so we can get you registered onto those platforms. My email address is there. I thank you again for watching and look forward to continuing these podcasts over the course of the World Cup. Thank you.